When you're waiting for your trees to dry, or if you're finished with your woods painting, you're going to use the other part of your paper to do some experimenting with the watercolors as a material. Our next graded assignment will be doing kind of abstract creatures with watercolors that we'll do first with the paint, and then when the paint's dry, we'll come back with little black markers and we'll add kind of little creature features. So we could add some faces to them, some hair, some antennas, and we'll turn kind of these abstract blobs into some sort of creatures and monsters. For the practice today, I want you to try to do a wash, which is where you get the paper wet first, and then come back with a little bit of color and spread it out. This will yield a really light tint of the color you've chosen. And I also want you to try to get some really dark values of that color. So that was a really light tint of green right here. And to get a darker value of green, I'm probably going to mix it with darker green. If you can see my brush up here, I'm going for a darker green. And maybe even a little bit of black. And I'm going to see if I can get some dark green going. I'm adding it to the wash right there. Or maybe I'll just do some sections of dark green by itself. Watercolor can do some very cool things, especially when you let the material kind of take on its own personality. Some blending, some bleeding, different colors. And I definitely want you to try to do some complementary color pairings. For your creature painting, you're going to need to have light values and dark values, and you'll need to have complementary color pairings. So here I'm putting in a little bit of a dark blue. Maybe I'll try to add some lighter values of that. I just have a wet brush right now. Just kind of playing with what happens if I pull the paint out. And now I'm going to add some orange to it, orange being the complementary color to blue. And that'll help fulfill one of my requirements for this being practice for my next creature painting. The creature paintings will be graded on different values and complementary color pairings. None of these little creatures or these little abstract shapes and designs I'm making are that big. Your next assignment won't be to do one large creature, but a bunch of smaller creatures that show some of the different techniques that you've learned with the watercolor paints. While this one here is a really wet technique I'm doing, where the colors are kind of bleeding and blending. Another technique you can do is something called dry brushing, where your brush doesn't have any water on it at all, and you put it into a little bit of a slightly wet pigment here. And then that means that it is going to make some drier marks that aren't going to be blending, but a little bit more of kind of a scratchy look to it. You can try that too. And one more technique would be a lifting off technique, where you actually take some of the color, lay it down, and then you take a towel or a Q-tip, and you actually can kind of blot it out. And sometimes that will get a different lighter value of that color without getting it quite so wet. So while you're experimenting today, try to get different values, light tints and dark shades of your different colors. Try to do some complementary color pairing, like this one, and this one's almost a red and a green. It's kind of an orangish red. And then I want you to try a few of the different watercolor techniques that I mentioned. They're also in our Prezi here before we go on to the graded assignment. Before we start our final project, we'll come back next class and make sure that we've done all 5 of these techniques and requirements here, and then we'll be able to add little details to our abstract creatures with a black pen. This will be the style of our next graded assignment. We're going to call it Watercolor Abstract Creatures. You'll need to have complementary pairings, and you'll need to have different values, tints, and shades in order to get a good grade on this next project.